So we just got a few new maps added to the rotation after our 2-year birthday celebration. Vendy, of course, bestowed on us some interesting things. Center Stage is the first one we're going to take a look at. We're going to break down the game, and then one of the viewers from the live stream sent us a game. So we're going to take a peek at that on this map. Before we do that, of course, I have to let everybody know I'm part of the content affiliate program. That means that the Phobies team does, in fact, give me coffee for producing Phobies content. And with that out of the way, let's get to it. We're going to talk about this a little bit, chat. So, no background music. I'm going to have to remember to add something if I do decide to add this to YouTube. So we're here on Center Stage. I could have put, because the content affiliates, as mentioned, were afforded the larger zoomed out one, which has a lot cooler art. But since we're going to be trying to break down the map and talk about what I expect to see on the map without having played on it, without having observed any games on it, we'll have to see. I know Chad has already thrown out some cool ideas, and I think there's a lot to explore here. Now, just to repeat the point that I brought up earlier, I saw some complaints about it where this is just transaction declined, but with more obstacles and no conveyor belts, which is, again, to repeat my rebuttal, if you change everything about the map, then the map is different. Galaxy brain, I know. Now, we didn't really change everything. Like, I do get the comparison to transaction decline. But remember, transaction decline, we're looking at the hearts like here. Actually, no. I think transaction decline is wider, maybe. But the hearts are along the center line. Hearts are along the center line. I can redeem a game review of the game I had on it today. I like the map so far. We can definitely look at that. We'll talk about the map, and then we can look at that, or if you want us to take a peek. It would probably be useful. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And of course, you're going to have the same path to get here. That means that your snowballs, your werewolves, your dronies are live. That's already a departure from transaction decline, where admittedly it's pretty far out, but you had the advantage of the conveyor tile to ensure that you can slide something in there pretty quick. Now, the retaliation from your opponent is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means that their response snowball could fireball you, their response jar could poke at you, that sort of thing. But you're not going to immediately have things threatening there. Now, similarly, if you go snowball and they go snowball, you can back off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to be tough. Parts where you had it? Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm trying to picture transaction declined in my head without overlaying it on top, just to not make things visually complex. But the point that, or one of the points that was brought up in the post I was kind of poking fun at is, oh, well, if you just break all the obstacles, so you bring out Gravedigger and immediately park it, here, or whatever, and then you start breaking these so that you gain access to, of course, the coveted center point. I do have to imagine that is probably going to be the opener for this map, especially initially, that people are going to get a Gravedigger online. If not turn 1, then turn 2. You got to do it pretty early, I think, so that you can get the additional sets. Now, of course, if you can pick your opponent's Terraformer, that's going to put you at a big advantage if you can maintain yours, because guess what? We get the old heebie-jeebie special down here on what we'll call your opponent's panic point. So the reason I say that is, of course, for orange, it's a shorter run than for blue. So this is kind of blue's panic point because they'll get to it first, but it's kind of sort of orange's, so it's a little difficult to determine here. But the point is that for this one, orange will be able to heebie-jeebie special, whereas in the north, blue can do it here. Now, that assumes, of course, that you don't break specific obstacles. So, if you just break enough of them over time, that you'll be able to continue to do it. Turn 1 droney, you could, but drone... I don't like droney openers. The only time that I've really seen droney meaningfully produce when you open with it is on This Might Sting a Little. And that's because that map is, of course, enormous. and you can zip around the map. Here, once that droney caps a point, it's kind of like, well, okay, now I'm constantly threatening it with dying, and it's chewing up a phobie slot, and it costs 2 keys. It just feels too inefficient for what it's going to be doing. So I would avoid it personally, but maybe it'll work. This map seems unique because it's one of the maps where all the panic points are fairly equally accessible. I do like that. I'm curious how often you're going to get a concave to threaten the heart. I get the sense that heart pushes are going to be extremely rare, barring certain like you've already lost circumstances. You know what I mean? Sounds perfect for me, inefficient. I mean, if you can make it work, if you can make it work. I know you're making a self-deprecating joke, but I don't feel like that. Even though the heart is kind of exposed, I feel like this set of panic points, it's not like other like heart rushy maps where ultimately all of the obstructions and all the obstacles around a given heart actually hurt the defender because it doesn't allow for them to set up a concave. I think the proximity to the vault means that you could pop out 2-3 things and then just pummel, right? I see people complaining because the map forces you to use Gravedigger or Mount Crushmore. That's exactly what I wanted to segue into, Dokuro. So chat's bringing up a lot of good points, but we might as well start with what Dokuro just said. So there is an argument that if the map forces you into a given game plan, aka you must start Gravedigger every game on this map for both players, that's bad and boring. And I get it. I do get it, because that is a valid argument, because part of what draws people to strategy games, to tactics games, is me implementing my strategy. It's not just and the way I've always differentiated it, and I'll repeat it now so people understand, strategy is what your overarching game plan is going to be, whether you decided it before you entered the game or shortly thereafter. My rough game plan is I'm going to start with Gravedigger, and then I'm going to bank, and then I'm going to put a big thing on the board, and I'm going to overwhelm them. Or I'm going to do this, and I'm going to swarm the board, and then I'm going to flood them, and then I'm going to go for heart, or whatever. The tactics are your actual positioning and phobie usage once you're in the game, like the actual playing of the game. That's kind of the broad strokes of my definition of it. And if the strategy is for every single game on center stage that you are going to open Gravedigger and then do this and then do this, a lot of people are not happy about that. First of all, nobody knows yet. Guarantee you've had there. It's like that meme. There are dozens of us. There's no way that you played even dozens of games on this map yet. Now, that isn't to say that people's assessments are incorrect. Even a broken clock, even a blind squirrel. Pick your euphemism of choice. And, of course, if you get a higher level player, you get the Karsts, you get the Alien Engineers, you get the Shadow Forces, you get pick somebody off the top of the ladder. They generally know what they're doing, and they probably are going to find something busted to do on the map, but they're going to do that anyway. I still find it interesting, even if the strategy is defined, because there is an execution requirement to, like, you can know what to do. That doesn't mean you can do it. Just because you know it doesn't mean you're capable of it. Like, I understand the physical mechanics of benching like 400 pounds. I can't physically do it right now. I could get there because it's something you can train and learn the skill of doing. But that doesn't mean I'm capable of doing it right now. And I know that's kind of a silly comparison, but the point is you may know, not with that attitude, just do it. Yeah, just will it into being. But, like, you may know what to do. That doesn't mean you can execute it. Now, on the third hand, the simple fact that something is quote-unquote solved, especially this early, can be discouraging to people. But I would encourage everyone to keep an open mind. I think that there's still a lot to learn on the map, and I don't think we should fall into these rote traps and just accept what things are, allegedly, because, as I've frequently said, Phobies doesn't have a huge amount of incentives to encourage discovering new play lines. It's just people will fall into their pattern, and they will do their pattern, and they won't deviate from it, because why should I? So, Chomp's trying to be modest. Clearly, he can press double that with low effort. Yeah. Literally not in my life. That's kind of what I feel like about Fornacified. I think you can get away without using Terraform whatsoever, since the obstacles are a double-edged sword. They can aid you as much as they're restricting you. Fornacified, I would kind of disagree with. I feel like that one, you kind of need a Terraformer. I would think Hold Still would be a better example. Hold Still is one where it's very common to go Gravedigger. It may even be optimal most of the time, but there are a ton of scenarios where, and we've seen successful wins, or victories claimed without doing Terraform tricks on that map. Get away without using Terraform on this map, I mean, not Fornacified. Yes, okay, fair, yeah. Or I'm trying to respond to each one in turn to give it its appropriate response, or as most appropriate that I can. Another point to bring up that I think I saw Karst, but also was certainly echoed by a lot of other people, is that there's some potential for burrow strategies here. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really agree with that. I think if you send a burrow phobia in here, you're asking it to get the living hell shelled out of it. I would not be surprised. So there's a couple ways this could go down. If you go a Terraform and your opponent doesn't, they're going to plop a lobber in here in this cubby, and they're just going to shell you. On this map, it would be easy to use Flight or Burrow instead of Terraform. I just don't know, like, what burrows are we talking about? Tiny Tim might be a good option if you want to use Burrow, but he's a bit pricey. I don't think Tiny Tim will work for exactly that reason. I think it's going to be too expensive for a small map. Like, this is something I've talked about before, and I don't want to digress too far at the moment because I want to stay on center stage, but I would be very interested in seeing, say, center stage, but you get big map keys and key generation. Because then, like, hey, does Tiny Tim suddenly become viable here because it's not as much, like, I don't have to bank as many turns to get this guy out there, where I'm not put as much of a tempo penalty because I'm generating more keys faster. But as far as burrows go, so we're talking, we got what? Molly, Grimes, Smother Mother, Tim, obviously, Tiny Tim. I can imagine people using Moly Bully / Grimes or Blinky and Gargles pretty often. Clobster, Mummy. Clobster I could see. Mummy and Tiny Tim feel too expensive to me. I could definitely see, I mean, Blinky's completely reasonable. Obviously, we're probably going to get a ton of Tooth Fairy and Murder Wing. Gargles seems kind of cute in this, though. So, like, imagine your opponent breaks this, and you just fly Gargles in and replace it, lock in whatever this is, and then lob onto it. Like, that would be kind of funny. It might not be good. Of course, Gargles could go here and lock this down on its own, but if this is open, the Gargles is still just going to end up with a headstone. You can just be the one guy, break one obstacle, then Honey Bear, and sit back the whole game, speaking of Gargles. I mean, honestly, is this a Honey Bearable map? So your opponent probably, like, say you're orange. Your opponent's blue. They march a Gravedigger up. You do, like, one key, because that could be a reasonable response while your opponent's screwing around terraforming things. So they break this. If you would open Gravedigger, like, how would you even... That just feels like such a late game thing. Because then you would, if you're orange, you'd probably want to lock down these. Because this is the farthest point from them. So that way you can reinforce easier. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that will probably win some games. I really do think Terraform is probably going to be optimal. It's the most obvious one. So here's the real question. How aggressive do we think this map is going to be? So where I'm going with it is this. Some maps, small maps, think your Eternal Mondays and a bunch of other small ones, Fernacify came up, where you can stall out like a 2-to-1 or even keep it 1-to-1. I cap this one, you cap this one, and then nobody bothers going for this because reasons. You stall it out, and then you just annoy your opponent enough, either have turrets in place or whatever, and then you spawn something enormous. Whether it's a boss, it's beauty, it's whatever. I don't know if... It doesn't feel like this is going to be as aggressive as, say, Transaction Declined. I don't think the map is set up such that you can, for example, do Karst high five push. I don't know how often you're going to be able to control all three. It actually feels like it's going to be very difficult to claim things. So if you break this obstacle, or I guess this one, and then you park a turret, you'd have to be 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, you could park a turret right here, and then right here. And then they cut off this triangle. That's going to be... It's going to be difficult. Because you're going to end up in this one key trading war, which is going to be super obnoxious. This is starting to me to feel like Lights Out. Just with a different set of obstacles. Instead of lava and some blocks. So what do we have as a breaker here? I mean, if it turns out like Lights Out, you get a tractor coming in and possibly ruining things. It may just come down to who can snipe each other's Gravedigger. I imagine that Innocuous, the whole family, is going to be good. Is this a good Shove Shark map? It's hard to think of a bad Shove Shark map, but I don't know how much you... Like, can you shove safely? This really feels like it's going to be much more defensive, this map, because it's going to take many, many turns to eliminate all of this, right? There's too many obstacles to do this quickly, or even necessarily meaningfully. So that means that you're probably better off stalling with a 2-to-1 disadvantage or a 2-to-1 advantage, getting something big and then taking over the game. Because I don't think you can... This is a long run. Like how... Even if you broke the blocks, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a lot of movement to get into range. It seems like a map to kill the heart. Well, that's where I'm going with it. I don't even know if you'll ever be able to. I think and I'm willing to be wrong on this. Like, right now, this feels like it's way too hard to get to the heart. And the heart is going to be super defensible. Because as compared to, and I was saying this earlier, as compared to other maps where, like, you'd have a bunch of obstacles surrounding the heart, making it difficult to defend. Here, it feels like it's going to be way easier to get defenders in here, so you can't commit into this concave. Convex, I guess, the way this is looking. You can't commit into this barrier because you're going to try and collapse in, and they have all the reinforcements. Now, the counter-argument could be, that means that you can control all 3 panic points and they can't effectively push out because they're stuck trying to defend, and if they commit either way or whatever, they're screwed. But it kind of feels like this is a... Like, what other maps do we have where the hearts are in the corners like this? We have Lights Out. We have Fornacified. I mean, we've seen heart pushes on all these maps, including Billy's Room, Home Sweet Home. But they aren't really... Like, Transaction Declined feels like a more heart push map than those. And I don't think there are as many similarities as people are initially saying. I mean, I'm interested to see how it goes, and we do have a game review to look at, so we'll get a quick peek and see how that game goes. After I reload Phobies. I mean, feel free to disagree with me, chat. I don't really see this being a quick push map, or it doesn't seem like it. I'm sure we will see, and like, I'm not saying it's impossible. Looks a lot more like Carousel. Which one is Carousel? I don't know what it is about that update, but I confuse a lot of them. Carousel is another one where it has... Yeah, I kind of see it. I kind of see what you're talking about. If you use one Gravedigger at the end of the game, you can wax him. How? I mean, I anticipate... We were saying this before, but I anticipate there's going to be a lot of Gravediggers on this map. Oop, clicked on the wrong thing. Gotta go hunting for this game. Did I miss it? Past it? Alright, we'll go back to the top. Ah, here it is. So this is a 36-turn game. So already we're kind of playing into what I was suggesting. Urk brought this up while we were discussing the map. So if this makes it to YouTube, maybe I'll keep this in just as an example game. Urk opening with kind of the classic here. Bad guy opening with what we expect to see on this map. If he's stupid, you can put up 2 obstacles to prevent him from passing and take all the panic boxes. I don't think you can count on that, Nurix. That's the issue, is like, if my opponent's bad, I can do this thing. Well, if your opponent's bad, you were going to win the game anyway, right? I'm not saying that it's never going to happen, but like, I don't think it's not good to rely on your opponent making mistakes, right? So we're already at a stalemate. 0 panic points taken. Now, bad guy has buttons to press, whereas Urk is a little stuck here. Not stuck, but they're banking. Now, one thing I'm a little surprised by is bad guy elected to not take the center panic point and instead just put... Like, this already doesn't make sense to me. You were planning on, clearly, as bad guy, putting another 1 key on the board. Just, okay, take the panic point and kill it. Like, your guy is going to die because of the spud that's out here. Take the advantage. It's probably only 1 or 2 turns worth of it, but that can matter. Tickles is not going to die here unless this guy's spud is like level 1000. Alright, so we get a Quagmire. I'm not gonna lie, already I'm seeing issues with bad guys' game plan. They are maxed out. They won't be shortly, but they're maxed out. They burned all their keys when Urk is banked to 9, and they put Quagmire on the board. The Quagmire presumably is intended to go take this panic point and be like, alright, hit me with Spud, who cares? I'm gonna live. Well, my friend, They have 9 keys. Something bad is about to happen to you, and I doubt that Quagmire is going to dig you out of the hole. Okay, honestly, I love this play from Urk. It's 1-1. You'll be down more panic points shortly, but it's 1-1 for now. And bad guy is maxed out, so they can't immediately respond to this Chuck. There are some issues with this in general, because, like, okay, there's multiple one-movers. The Terraform is making this incredibly clunky, except if you notice this whole setup up here, like if Chuck gets here, and I didn't talk about this, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. It can't quite reach from the panic point, but I mean, it doesn't have to go very far in order to shell the heart, and then you have to funnel into the Chuck. Which, admittedly, if you get on top of the Chuck, it's going to have to make this hard retreat to try and get out of there, but you have Spud to assist with it. Like, this could be kind of cute. You know, getting in, maybe not Innocuous. Innocuous might be too fragile. But I could see this, like, Chuck specifically being a thing. We've seen Chuck on, is it Always Watching? Is that the one where you can crush more of the bottom and top? All right, so we get the Shove Shark, which means that there's going to be an initial Chuck, I was going to say mic drop, and then try and change it to, like, hand drop, but that doesn't sound impressive. But either way, all right, never mind, we're not doing it. We're just using... I do like Phantom getting stapled to Chuck's ass just to try and follow him around, not in, like, a Human Centipede way, because that movie's disgusting. But, like, you just have... not Phantom, you have Shove Shark, rather. Shove Shark follow Chuck around, and then that way you can just get the positioning you want. So honestly, bad guy might have been better off trying to set up the heebie-jeebie play here, although the problem is I think you lose your Gravedigger if you do the heebie-jeebie play at the bottom. Oh, excuse me. Because breaking this obstacle, I don't know what that does. I mean, yes, it opens up more angles, but... So bad guy is pressuring. But, like, look at this. 5690. It's kind of a big who cares. Get the boop. That means we get some pot shots going down. Starting the damage coming in. Yeah, this feels like it's going to be a way more defensive map. Admittedly, I think Bad Guy's plan played into this, but I'm not really sure what else they could have done to try and change that. At this point, they do have 10 keys up. You get the Urk Classic. Little Gargles action. Urk, I believe it was Urk pointed this out on Rush Hour. The Chuck Gargles setup. So what's the plan here? Bad guy with their super passive positioning allows Urk to kind of do whatever they want. Now, I'll be honest. Urk is in control of this game, even though they are technically losing. However, I'm not super impressed by no Terraform. Like, I find it difficult to believe that Urk would not have been in a better position if they had access to a Terraform. Now, that would have completely... That's a boggart. The new and improved boggart. It would have completely disrupted Urk's game plan in order to add a Terraformer to this. However, it feels like you'd be better off if you did. Just Building a cornfield up here. Now, this is level 10 versus level 11. It's not going to die anyway. It wouldn't have died on level. So, the bad guy could get aggressive and claim this point. Yep. Yeah, probably got to use Chuck here. It's made for it. I mean, even if you want to use Chuck, I refuse to believe that there's no way Chuck works. Or rather, let me rephrase this. That there is not a way that Chuck works with Terraform. There has to be a way to use both. And I think you got to be and like maybe it's without Shove Shark. Shove Shark is cute here. And it did allow for a couple of pot shots that would not have ordinarily happened. But you could also imagine if instead of Shove Shark, you got rid of these two obstacles and Chuck was there, would you be in a better position? You know, like if Chuck was here, you might be more vulnerable to this ultimately. But at the time that all that stuff came out, you had no idea that Boggart was coming. Maybe leaving it like this does keep Chuck safer, so therefore you don't have to worry about him as much. But obviously your opponent can play back and play more defensively, whereas if, for example, the block above Shove Shark and Chuck was broken, Chuck could then have threatened Quagmire. I don't think you'd kill it, but you get the idea. I wouldn't say that Chuck benefits specifically because of the obstacles. That is a benefit, but it's more that Chuck benefits from protection, which may sound similar, or should sound similar, but they're not quite the same. I don't know what bad guy was doing most of this game. I'm not trying to knock the Chuck plan. I mean, I am, but I'm not. Okay, so they just attacked it instead of attaching the bomb. Which then microscopic? Okay. It definitely feels as though bad guy played into a few different things here. It kind of looks like Chuck is holding this. Also, that is some Acme level explosives. Tell me that doesn't look like Wile E. Coyote would have gotten that shipped to him in an enormous crate. It is 1,300 damage, though. I love how these traps that Urk laid 1,000 years ago on their own side of the map are becoming relevant. Like, that's just ridiculous. Oh, the bomb. Look at that. That looks like an NES game. Not like it matters. Hilariously, I doubt they can even kill the gargles. Even if they do, whatever kills it is going to be in range of the Chuck and get annihilated. Ball game. GG. So how does that game impact our analysis? I mean, I do think Chuck is hypothetically viable. I think marching a big threat up, whether it's Chuck, the old classic boss Gonzo, Frosty, whatever. Like, I didn't talk about, and this is something I did want to bring up, was maybe Bombs can work, specifically Frosty, because Frosty could, if you leave the obstacles, fly up to here, and then, you know, you get your option of whatever you want to freeze, however you want to set it up. But there's a lot of area for your opponent to hypothetically spread out, or at the very least be kind of vertical, so it'll be difficult to get a valuable bomb. But maybe. This one's going to be interesting, so I'm interested in other people's thoughts as we go forward and how this map plays out. So let me know. Let me know what you think or what's been working out for you. Yeah, I don't know, chat. I'm not super enthusiastic about this one, I don't think. This one has me a little concerned because I feel like this one's going to drag out. Watching that, I can imagine teams centered on Repeller or Crushmore are both working really well. Yeah. I think you can probably do the Chuck plan. So maybe this is a better way to put it when I was talking about... I'll put it back up. So when I was talking about the potential negatives of Chuck and the advantages of introducing a Terraformer, maybe that's a better way to do it. So instead of spending 12 keys on Chuck Shove Shark, you spend 11 keys on Repeller Crushmore, or 8 keys on Gravedigger Crushmore, and set up basically the same thing. That's why I was thinking a tractor is probably... Like, the first thing that comes to mind whenever I look at a map like this, a slow map, that's a small map, is Alien Engineer on Lights Out. And just the smothering, suffocating presence of Alien Engineer on Lights Out. I've watched a ton of Alien Engineer games where it just boils down to, we get down to 6-7 keys, Alien Engineer puts an attractor on the board, and the game is just over. It's not over immediately. It's over like 10, 20 turns from now, but eventually they get you. And the game just ends. So I could see the same sort of game plan where you trade 1 keys or you stabilize, you whittle your opponent down, you get a tractor, and the big problem is this. How do you get at something that's back here? So imagine you're blue, your opponent's orange. Orange has claimed these 2 panic points. Or they've claimed these 2 panic points. Doesn't matter. They put an attractor on the board, and then they park a tractor here. And these are blue. I know it's kind of light blue, but whatever. It's close enough. Those are blue. How the hell do you get at that attractor? You assume that some of these are broken, either by you or them or both. You just can't, right? And eventually they'll pick you off one by one, because they don't necessarily have to attractor pull the whole team. They're just going to attractor pull one guy. Or they'll poke the 1 key from a really safe position, like here. That's probably a better position for the attractor, because then it can hit both. I think that's a better one than this. That is not what I wanted it to do. Because I have the paint green screen. It's erasing the green. So like you put a tractor up here, right? And then it covers both. And I'm not real sure what you do. Not gonna lie. Because there's really no way to dislodge it. You'd have to dive it. And I think we all know how attractor dives usually go. We shall see. We shall see. I'm a little concerned about that map, chat.